Today's art project is Cherry Blossoms in Spring.
Hello, kindergartners. So today's art project, we're going to be working on a tree. This particular tree we're working on is a cherry blossom tree. They often are planted here in parks. University of Washington has a big section that's got a lot of cherry trees in them, and I love them because they're very beautiful and there's lots of pink on them, and I think they're just a great sign of spring. So for this project, you will need a few materials. You're going to need a paintbrush, some water to clean off your brush with, a piece of white paper, and you're going to need some paints. I like to put my paints on a paper plate or something because I don't have an artist's palette at home to use, so I just use a paper plate. For this particular project, I'm using just some regular acrylic paints, and the colors that I'm using are white, light blue, pink, green with a little bit of yellow, and some dark brown. I didn't have dark brown, so I used some regular brown and black, and I'm just gonna mix them together. If you don't have acrylic paints, guess what? That's okay. You can use your watercolor paints if you have it, or you can just make your picture with crayons as well. One of the differences is if you use crayons, you're not going to want to do the background first. You'll probably want to do your tree first and then color your background. But otherwise, it will be pretty much the same and it's still going to look beautiful. So let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the sky portion. And I'm going to take my paintbrush and I'm going to put it in the blue and maybe get a little bit of white on there. You might be wondering why I have white in with my blue and why I'm not just painting my background blue. And although sometimes we have sunny days where the sky is just totally blue, I think that a lot of times we've got some nice little clouds in the sky, and I like it when there's nice white fluffy clouds in the sky. So if I put a little bit of white in there with my blue, you can see when I'm painting it that it kind of just looks like there's clouds in the sky. So if you don't have this type of paint, you could still do this with watercolor. You just would put, use your light blue and then maybe just not have it as dark in some spots, or you could use your white watercolor to make some white clouds. If you're using a crayon to do this, then when you do your background, you could draw some nice little fluffy clouds. I've seen a lot of the clouds that you have drawn, and I know that you are all cloud experts. So like I said, I'm just gonna keep going until right about this spot on my page. So I'm gonna make a little mark there because that's probably about where I'm gonna draw my sky too. And there is no real right or wrong way to do this. We're just trying to make the sky. And like I said, if you're using crayons or even markers or colored pencils, that's okay. I would just recommend waiting for the sky to do that part last, because it's gonna be a little bit harder to do the tree over the top of it. But if you're using any sort of paints, then you can go ahead and do the background first. Okay. So almost done. I'm gonna make sure that I didn't miss any spots. All right. Okay, so I have my sky is all done. Now that my sky's done, I only use one paintbrush for the whole thing because I don't feel like having to clean a whole bunch of brushes. So after I'm done with that color, I'm gonna rinse it off in my water just to get that extra paint off. And then before I move on to my next color with the acrylic paints, I dry off my paintbrush because I don't want it really wet. If you're using watercolor paints, then obviously you will need your paintbrush wet. But if you're just using acrylic paints like I am, then you're gonna want to dry it off a little bit. Okay, so now that I've done my sky, I am ready to move on to my grass. So for my grass, see I've got this green, and I like it. Sometimes the grass isn't all solid one color exactly, so I mix a little bit of my yellow with my green when I'm doing that. And then same thing that we did for the sky, just gonna go across and paint some grass. And you notice I'm not going completely straight across when I'm doing it. And that's because the paintbrush will leave little lines, and the little lines will look like grass. Kind of makes it look like there's maybe some little hills and some different textures in the grass as well. Almost done. And if my fingers get a little paint on them, guess what? That's okay, that happens. You also notice that I have something underneath of where I'm painting, and that's so that I don't make a big mess on a table. Okay. All right, great. So our grass is done. Let's take a look and see what we need to do next. Let's look at our picture. So I've got sky, I've got some grass. Now the next step that I'm gonna do with my painting is I'm gonna make the tree itself. So I'm gonna go ahead and rinse off my brush. And then after I rinse it off, I'm gonna take my paper towel, I'm gonna dry it off so it's not super wet. Okay, now that my paintbrush is ready to go, I'm going ahead and I'm gonna find my brown color. Again, if you're using crayons, go ahead and use brown, dark brown for this, or really any brown, whatever color brown you'd like your tree to be. It doesn't really matter. Just a brown color, because the tree barks are usually brown, right? Okay, so I've got my paintbrush, and you notice I'm using the same, like I said, the same brush for everything. I'm gonna start at the bottom. And do you remember what this part of the tree is called? You do? That's right, it's called the trunk. And I'm just gonna take my paintbrush, just like this. You notice I'm kind of just pressing it on here. I'm not making big thick lines. So I've got the base of my trunk, and now I'm gonna start making some branches. What's kind of cool is every single tree is gonna look different. So your branches don't need to go in the same place as mine do. So keep going. And you can add as many branches as you want to. I want a kind of a big tree, so I'm gonna put some way up here. I'll put some branches over here as well. Oh, I can't wait to see all of your beautiful paintings. I bet they're gonna turn out so nicely, or your drawings if you're using crayons. Okay, I think I've got enough branches, kindergartners. What do you think? Okay, so kindergartners, my branches are done. Now it is time for the fun part, because my tree, it looks kind of like a tree might look in winter, right? It has no beautiful colors on it, but we're in springtime. So in the spring, our trees have beautiful colors on them, a lot of blossoms like this one does. So to make my cherry blossoms, I've got some pink and some white. And I am going to use my finger to make the flowers. And I'm gonna dip it kind of where the pink and the white meet, because our flowers are several colors. And then I'm just gonna lightly dab wherever I would like flowers. If you're using watercolor, you can just go ahead and paint your colors on there. If you're using crayons, you can just draw them on there. But they're just nice little flowers. I like to do it this way instead of using my paintbrush, because then it kind of looks like the flowers are coming off the page a little bit. It gives them a little bit of texture. Plus it's fun to do anytime we get a finger paint. And I'm just gonna fill up my tree with lots and lots of flowers. I bet you that you have seen lots of Beautiful trees out there lately. You can look out your window. Where you live, you can probably see some. Since we're not in the classroom right now, I've been spending lots of time outside, going for walks with my kids, and we see all sorts of fun trees on our walk. So, all right, keep going. And when you're doing this, if you don't have the light pink like I have, or you want to have a little darker pink or even a different color altogether, maybe your tree, maybe you don't want yours to be a cherry blossom tree. Maybe you really like trees that have red flowers. That's okay. But I wanted mine to look like a nice spring tree. So that's why I used these colors. And I'm gonna keep going, and I'm gonna fill up the rest of my tree with flowers. And you can do the same thing. Just keep going, filling up your tree with lots of flowers. Great job, kindergartner. So now that my tree is all done, I'm gonna put a couple little flowers on the ground because sometimes it gets windy outside, and when it gets windy, sometimes a few of the little petals fall on the ground. So I'm just gonna take my finger and I'm gonna put a couple here. If you don't want yours to have any flowers on the falling on the ground, you don't have to do that. I just like to. All right. Well, kindergartners, that is it for today's art lesson. I can't wait to see your beautiful pictures, paintings of your cherry blossom trees. Thank you so much for joining me again. Have a great day. Bye.